Now I want to invite to deliver his lecture Professor Pascal Kisku, Assistant Professor of Physics, TDB College, Raniganj, West Bengal. His topics: reservation for tribals and the state forts in West Bengal. Professor Kisku, please come here.
जोहार सनम को ओनोडे हे सेटर कान सानाम पठुआ माचेत एवं माचेतानी को इन पास्टा खन आयमा सारहाव आर जोहार. Good afternoon to all. Myself Pascal Kisku, Assistant Professor of Physics of Tribini Devi Bhalotia College, Raniganj, affiliated to Kazi Nazrul University. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Suri Vidyasagar College for organizing the two-day international seminar that is jointly conducted by Indian Council of Social Science Research. Thank you to all. My topic is reservations for tribals and the state fairs in West Bengal. These are some pictures of indigenous peoples and their cultures. You can see the indigenous people did not get various rights for free, but instead earned them. The Chuar revolt, which is also known as the Bhumij revolt, was conducted mainly by the Bhumij communities from 1767
Sir, I cannot hear
to
anything.
1834. In 1820 to 21, the Ho tribes of the Chotanagpur Plateau region led a major revolt against British colonial authorities in their traditional systems. Exploitation by moneylenders and landlords and the faulty revenue system. After that, the SPT Act was
Please turn
introduced
on the audio.
by the British government
turn on the
after
audio.
the Santal Hul under the leadership of Sidhu Kanu in 1855 to 1856, or the CNT Act after the Ulgulan under the leadership of Bhagavan Birsa Munda in 1899-19. The British passed the Santal Pargana Tenancy Act in 1876, which offered some protection for the tribals against exploitation. The Santal Pargana Tenancy Act 1876 prohibits the sale of Adivasi land to non-Adivasi in the Santal Pargana region along the Jharkhand border with West Bengal. After independence, the Santal Pargana Tenancy Act 1949 is the first coalfield law of tenancy in the Santal Pargana division of the Jharkhand area. When the British Raj acted, it enacted supplementary existing British era tenancy law and coalfield a sum of the customary laws relating to land. Examining the movements and rebellions of indigenous peoples reveals that they have primarily protested for their rights to water, forest and land at various times. However, it is noted that Bhagavan Birsa Munda had raised an alarming against the conservation of indigenous people to Christianity by Christian missionaries and the demands of indigenous people for their land rights. Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar had also proposed the special laws for tribals in Indian Constitution. Singh in 1983 categorized the constitutional provisions for scheduled tribe into 4 types of protections, such as protective provisions, development provisions, reservation provisions and miscellaneous provisions. Protective provisions are those which protect the interest of scheduled tribes, and it is noteworthy the even provisions relating to the fundamental rights have been qualified with reasonable restriction in favor of the scheduled tribes. And we can see the protective provisions in article number 15, article number 16, article number 19, article number 23. In article number 16, it provides for equality of opportunities for all citizens in matters relating to employment and appointment to any public office, but the state has been empowered to make reservation in appointments
Sir,
or
I have a
posts
question.
in favor of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe people. Article 19 grants the rights to freedom of speech, assembly, association, union, movement and residence throughout the country. Freedom to practice any profession, occupation, trade or businesses. Article 23 prohibits human trafficking, other form of forced labor, and this has special reservation for the scheduled tribe also. Second one is development provisions. Development provisions are those which provide a constitutional guarantee to the underprivileged group for their development. These provisions are related to the development aspects. For instance, issuance related to the policy matters are emphasized in Article 46, which calls for the planned development of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Article 275 deals with the availability of the financial resources. Article 339 of 2, whereby the center is empowered to give directions to a state, asking them to draw up and execute schemes for the welfare of the scheduled tribes. And third one is reservation provisions. Reservation provisions are those which provide a guarantee in matters relating to the employment and allow reservation to any backward classes of the citizen in India. Article 330 assured reservation of seats of scheduled caste and scheduled tribe communities on the basis of population in the House of the People. Article 332, the reservation of the seats in the legislative assemblies of the states. Article 335 assured reservation in public services and post in educational institutions. And last one is miscellaneous provisions. Miscellaneous provisions are those which are related to the specification of the scheduled tribes. Article 342 empowers the President to denote the tribes or tribal communities to be deemed as scheduled tribes. Constitutional safeguards. Bharma in 2017 opinioned that the main causes of backwardness of tribal people are illiteracy and exploitation. Tribal people continue to be victims of exploitation by government and other agencies. Hence, Constitution guarantees various safeguards for the protection and development for the tribal people. First one is educational and cultural safeguards. Article 15 of 4 provides the promotion of social, the weaker section of the Indian society, including scheduled tribe. Article 29 provides the protection of educational and cultural interest of the people belonging to SC and STs. And further clause of 2 means Article 29 of 2 is controlled by the clause of 4 of Article 15, which is incorporated in the Constitution by the First Amendment Act 1951. Article 46 ensures for the people belonging to the SC and ST that the state shall promote with special care the educational and economic interest of the weaker section of the people. Article 350 ensures that people belonging to the SCs and STs shall have the right to ensure distinct language, script or culture. Next one is social safeguard. Article 23, prohibition of the human trafficking and begging and other similar form of forced labor. Article 24 prohibits employment of children in factories and other harmful industries. Article 25 provides subject to public order and it is applicable to tribal people and for practicing their religious rites. And third one is economic safeguards. Article 25 275 of the Constitution provides for the assistance of the states for the implementation of the provisions of the constitutions. Political safeguard. It
হ্যালো রতন মাহালি
provides
তুমি আমাকে শুনতে পাচ্ছ?
the political safeguards of tribal people, which relating to political safeguards are mainly contained in the article 164, 332, 334, 243 of D, 243 of T, 371A to 371H. Article 338 of A provide for the National Commission to safeguard the interest of the scheduled tribe community. The commission shall be appointed by the President of the India. And last one is service safeguard.
হ্যালো রতন শর্মা তুমি আমাকে শুনতে পাচ্ছ?
This is the provisions related to service safeguard are contained in the article 16 of A, 16 of 4A, 16 of 4B, 335 and 320 of 4. Article 16 of 4 provides for the reservation in the posts
রতন
and
শর্মা
services.
তুমি আমাকে শুনতে পাচ্ছ?
Article 15 of 4 and 16 of 4 have the provisions of the safeguards the interest of the backward classes of the people. These are the constitutional rights, or we can say that few of the constitutional right which I have just mentioned for the tribal people to uplift them in every aspect. Prevention of Atrocity Act 1989. Article 17, untouchability is abolished and its practice in any form is forbidden. The enforcement of any disability arising out of untouchability shall be an offence
নতুন
punishable
শর্মা,
in
can you hear
accordance
me?
with law. To give effect to this article, Parliament made several enactments like Untouchability Offence Act 1955. Parliament also passed the Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribes Prevention of Atrocity Act 1989,
নতুন
which
শর্মা, can you hear me?
became effective from 30th January 1990. The rules framed under this act, called the Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribe Prevention of Atrocities Rule 1995, which were notified on 31st March in 1995. The Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribe Prevention of Atrocity Amendment Act 2015 was notified on 1st January 2015, and the Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribes Prevention of Atrocities Rule 2016 framed under the Amendment Act came into force on 14th April 2016. But nowadays we can find that some kind of shrewd and clever non-tribe people, those who are getting ST certificates, and by providing their fake or false ST certificate, they are grabbing all the reservation and right of constitutional rights which are provided for tribal people only. Tribal people are depriving their rights from their jobs, from their educational institute, and in any other areas also. We the tribal people are getting deprived in every aspect, in every sector. It may be in the job sector, it may be in educational sector or any form of education, it may be the general degree course, it may be medical course, it may be the technical line, teachers training or nursing training, etc., etc. Even in the constitutional or other representation area, we the tribal are getting deprived. It is worth to mention that in the last Lok Sabha election, which was conducted in April to June 2024, the 18th Lok Sabha election of India, we found that at Lok Sabha constituency, Jhargram 33 constituency, which is only reserved for scheduled tribe. But we found that a non-tribe candidate who occupy a or who obtained a ST caste certificate and contested at that ST reserved seat, and he got nearly above 12,000 votes, and after 6 months the concerned authority, means the subdivisional officer, concerned subdivisional officer officially declared that his caste certificate is totally fake, and they declared by order that that concerned person who fought on the Jhargram 33 constituency, which is reserved for only tribal people, he contested at that seats. And it is also found that that last 3-story panchayat election, there are nearly 140 suspicious or fake tribes or non-tribes, though those who are contesting or contested at the scheduled tribe reserved seat. In the one more important thing which I should mention, that in the question answer session of last Vidhan Sabha Assembly, our Honorable BCW Minister, Backward Classes Welfare Department Minister of West Bengal, Sri Buluchik Barai, said on his question answer session that in their governmental service era, means since 2011 to 2014, they distributed 1.6 crore ST certificate in West Bengal. But if you look at 2000 census of 2011, then one may find that there are only 52 lakhs tribals in West Bengal in 2011. But the minister said in the Vidhan Sabha Assembly that they distributed 1.6 crore, means 1 crore 60 lakhs scheduled tribes certificates to ST community people. But in 2025, there are maximum 85 lakhs tribals in West Bengal. You can realize, or it is very easy to understand, that lots of ST certificates were issued to non-ST candidates. So this kind of shrewd, clever, or whatever they are grabbing the scheduled tribe certificates by showing their false tribal culture, by false land deed, by producing the false land deed where it is clearly mentioned any subcaste of tribal community, and they are deforming our tribal history, especially the Bhumish revolt, Chuar revolt, and the Santal Hul, and many times they are grabbing also tribal cultures also, because actually they have the local culture, but they are declaring any community's culture as their self. Okay, and we can find that many encroachers also grabbing tribal lands. So actually, moreover, we can say that still now we are suffering, and we the tribal people are deprived from our constitutional rights. So despite these legal and constitutional guarantees, the present reality in the state like West Bengal reveals a significant erosion of tribal rights and instance of non-tribal availing ST reserved seats in education and employment, as well as contesting election in ST reserved constituencies, highlight systemic loopholes and the lack of enforcement also. Additionally, illegal transfer of tribal and continues often without proper legal sanction. Consequently, the constitutional promises to the scheduled tribes in West Bengal have become largely symbolic. The historical pattern of marginalization and exploitation persists, with genuine tribal communities being deprived of the rights and benefits intended for their upliftment. This ongoing injustice echoes the centuries-old struggle of indigenous peoples, demonstrating that while the legal framework exists, its implementation remains inadequate. Thank you all. Thanking you for listening to me, and photo courtesy to Google, and special thanks to Professor Dr. Susikanta Murmu, Assistant Professor of Political Science, Lalpur Mahatma Gandhi College, who provided me the books, notes, and all other relevant documents. Thank you again. If you have any queries regarding this issue, may ask me. Feel free to ask any question. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, Sepoy Sarvis are here. Okay, sir. So now I would like to invite Professor Sepoy Sarvis. He is now Assistant Professor in Anthropology, Vishwabharati. He will deliver his lecture on a Janajati fight for self-reliance, a case study of Gathi organization among the Niwas of Nepal. For your information, after this speech, I will take a lunch break, and after that, we will be here to resume the session. Thank you.
আচার্য শুনতে পাচ্ছ আমাকে? তোমার প্রেজেন্টেশন রেডি?
The current paper that I'm trying to The current paper that I'm trying to present here is about a Janjati fight of self-reliance,
Yeah,
a case study of Guti
বুঝতে পারছো
organizations
আমাকে?
among the
তোমার
Neva
presentation
of
ready?
Nepal. Right? In anthropology, we generally try to understand, especially socio-cultural anthropology, we try to see there are two important aspects that I would believe that we are focusing on. That is, one is how we organize ourselves as well as how we behave in certain social and other conditions that are provided to us. Right? Similarly, in order to understand a society, we generally try to understand the family structures, kinship organizations, and clan
তোমার
organizations, and
presentation
so on.
ready?
A Guti organization that I'm taking it as a case here is also another social organization unit, which is particularly a non-kinship group, right? Like why am I focusing on non-kinship group is mostly to understand simple societies, we would take the example of
উদ্ভিজা আচার্য,
kinship groups, but
শুনতে পাচ্ছ
a
আমাকে?
non-kinship group is
তোমার
something which
presentation
we
ready?
almost ignore, like friendships, associations, even this can extend to urban areas where we have gated communities and all of these things coming into picture. And in anthropology so far we have been ignoring on the non-kinship group formations and the rate that we are going to in the nature of urbanization. It is believed that we will be end up mostly 60 to 70% of the population will live in something called urban area. In this context, we wouldn't potentially have a kinship in its form operating and trying to explain us about the social organization. But what it has to do with what I'm currently discussing, why am I discussing in this seminar, which is discussing about the people's movement and all of that, right? So before going into it, let me also introduce you to this community, that is Neva. Neva is basically an indigenous community, a Janjati in Kathmandu Valley. Out of Kathmandu Valley, you can find at least 88% of all the Neva population. They are also situated in Sikkim and other abroad countries, but nearly 88% of the population still live in Kathmandu Valley. They are considered to be the original inhabitants of the valley, which comprises of 4 districts. However, 300 years ago, there was this Gorkha king who has tried to annex the whole country, like he was taken from other valleys, and he kind of came up with what we consider as a Nepal currently. However, there is always a rift between the indigenous communities and the rulers. So what Gorkha king did was he tried to restrict them from entering into bureaucracy, army, and restricted mostly them to agriculture and other kind of trade and other architecture, other art factors. This has particularly played a very important role for them to form this Guti organization. So what does this Gutis are and why it is important for us to discuss, and why are we discussing in the form of self-reliance, right? So a Guti is a group which comprises of non-kin members. They are not supposed to be, or they are not, doesn't necessarily be a kin members. They come together to fulfill certain obligations that are vested on them, right? In the village that I carried out field work, this is part of my PhD work and also the ongoing research that I am doing. So in the village there are nearly about 150 groups that we find, right? Very like varies. Particularly they don't have a name, but they go by the function that they serve. So out of these 150 groups, I again further divided them into 7 major groups, and the rest are called as Guchas. Guchas is like smaller group. So the membership varies from 3 to 150, right? The smaller groups will have merely 3 or 4 members. But the bigger groups, if you take the 7 groups, 7 big Gutis that I am talking about, they would potentially have members up to 100. So what is the purpose of the 7 major Gutis? Like for example, each and every family will come under these 7 Gutis. So these 7 Gutis first and primarily have an obligation to cremate any people that come under their jurisdiction, right? Out of these 7, the whole village out of like 2,000 houses can be further classified out of these 7 Gutis. So once a person dies, all the Guti members who represent the respective families has to be present mandatorily, right? This is one of the very, very important obligations. This might have arisen because in the olden days the financial situations were not good, or mobilizing money or like resources to cremate a body would be very hard for them, right? So thus the society takes the responsibility of cremating the dead if in case of someone deceased in the respective families. The second important responsibility that they are vested with is taking care of the temple, right? They have a very big temple which particularly also has certain properties and ponds that are associated with it. All these members turn-wise, in all these 7 groups will take turns in order to maintain this and organize village festival and so on. They also maintain the village roads, like which is laid out by a normal bricks. They also take care of the road that leads to crematorium ground. They are also vested with the responsibility of laying a plank over a river when river actually overflows, and they also have the responsibility of cleaning a canal which leads water to this place. They also have the responsibility of taking care of the common resting places and small Buddha stupas that you find in the village. So I divided these functions, these responsibilities associated with Gutis as religious, social and infrastructural functions. When I was there, I was also very curious, and I asked them, like, what if I'm a researcher there and I'm a stranger to them, what if I die, right? Who will cremate me, right? They went to the extent of even discussing whose responsibility it is to be vested on. Why I'm stating this is, these are not written documents, these are not constitutional wise given provisions or operational mechanisms, but they have incorporated them in their society so well that it almost, they take pride in being the member of the Guti, right? And once we closely observe at this particular Guti organization, it also becomes very, very apparent for us that the historical reasons that I stated, the king coming from outside and then neglecting them within their own lands, and also the necessity that they have to manage and they have to rely on themselves, had come up with this group formations which particularly takes care of them. So each and every Guti itself can be considered as a little republic with their own set of rules, how they operate, and advisors to guide them. There is a secretary that takes turn each house-wise, and how they particularly manage and everything, had told that what if we all particularly have this kind of groups, do we really need a government intervention, right? So this also stems from an argument governing the commons, where particularly Eleanor was from the first female Nobel laureate, economics Nobel laureate, argues that when a common property resources are even like governing oneself is meddled by the government, this generally gets collapsed. Like her argument is, again, is the argument that a common property resources should not be handed over to the tribal communities or the local communities. She argues that if you give them full rights, they wouldn't probably destroy it, right? We also have repeated evidences coming from earlier. The government would blame tribal communities or forest dwellers for forest destruction, but then later we have studies that prove that disproves, right? If you remove them, there would be potentially more destruction than saving the forest and so on. So the government doesn't exactly has to play any role within this community, and they also try to kind of keep it with the neighbors also in the social organization. They never allow the government's intervention to a maximum level. But this doesn't exactly sit well with the governments, right? It's like almost like I'm taking my powers into my hands. Same thing is what is happening in Jharkhand, Kunti district, Patalgadi movement, where they are asking for constitutional rights to be implemented, but government is not willing to do it. It's so surprising to see the constitution is supposed to be implemented, and when people demand it, the government is not willing to do so, right? So in the similar lines, there are historical evidences, either when the monarchy existed before 2008 or even when the recent democratic government that they have, both of them have been constantly attacking on these Guti organizations. How do they do it? It's also very interesting to see, because the exploitation has been normalized and we don't even understand how these things generally operate in a operational level. So what first the government did was they came up with the Land Survey and Measurement Act in 1963 AD, which particularly has to be understood with the whole notion of what do we mean by land and how and communities perceive it, right? For example, there was also this common anecdote that keeps coming, that when money lenders come to tribal areas and ask that, I'll lend you the money, you please give me this land to me, it was kind of unfathomable to them that how can you generally give the land, because this land was here, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, everyone has cultivated it, and I'm going to be here and my children are going to have the same rights. They couldn't even understand how particularly this land can be transferred to a landowner, or how even the courts can go to the extent of saying, yes, this land belongs to an outsider. So the comprehension of commodification of the land was also very prime character here to understand this Land Survey Act that came in 1963 by the then monarchy government, which particularly wanted to survey and record what type of lands are owned by it. The Gutis, being a very major groups, also have a lot of lands under their control, right? So what they do is they take some help, financial help from them in order to organize themselves and function in a day-to-day basis. They also have a major responsibility of organizing a feast, and all of this, that money basically acts as a substantial. It is also surprising to see that many Gutis doesn't know that where their lands are actually. Like, this information was never passed on. So this particularly plays into government's hand, and they go into Land Survey Act. So generally the tenants themselves got these lands on themselves. Like in some cases, they couldn't figure out where their land is, but at the same time, like there are like some historical blunders that Gutis also have carried out. Then there is another Lands Act 1964, which is also considered as a Tenancy Act, which is a very actually beautiful act, right? For example, there was a lot of tenants who were fighting in Nepal at that time, asking for equal rights over the land movement and all of that. So the government came up through this act saying that half of the land that the tenants grow will be given to the tenants rather than the landowners, the complete land. However, the misunderstanding or even like deliberate attempt to break the bone of the Guti organization can also be read in these lines, because the whole point of tenancy is land redistribution, right? That this particular act that I am speaking is land redistribution. What do we mean by land distribution? We don't want the land to be accumulated with one particular individual. Thus, we would like to give it to as many people as it can. But the Gutis are not basically an individual land controllable. These are already again a community-owned groups, a group-owned properties, and they are not owned by one particular individuals. The government should have been little careful in not to club these Guti lands also under this act that has defeated the whole point of Guti functioning. They also had come up with a Guti Corporation Act, which also goes by Guti Samsthan, which claims to have the whole record of how many Gutis are there, what the Gutis do, and what is the every other detail. But when I was trying to collect the data, these Guti Samsthans were always given to the non-Nevas who particularly doesn't understand how Guti works, and eventually leading to the Guti functioning coming to a halt. They also had come up with recently, after the democratic government, again, like people generally were hoping that this kind of blunders will not happen, because in monarchy they didn't had much say to participate in the policy acting and all of that. But even after democratic government was elected in 2009, there was a Guti bill that had come into picture, which doesn't actually vary from much of the monarchy's policies that has come into the picture. 4 lakh Neva population had come to Kathmandu city halt. They have halted this, they have protested against this bill, because they worried that these Gutis will automatically be withered away if this particular act comes into the picture, right? So why this becomes very, very important again for Gutis to resist is that a historical place of self-reliance. Right? So my takeaway, why I even wanted to present about this Nepal example here is, we also have many local group formations that we happen within our own communities, which we institutionalize. But there is a lot of intervention either in the form of modernism, either in the form of government coming in, either in the form of traditional political systems replaced by modern political systems with the Gram Panchayat elections and so on, which we continuously ignore, right? And all of these group formations, which that community feels and believes and tries to institutionalize, tend to be more successful rather than implementing it from the outside. Like for example, self-help groups. The whole understanding of self-help groups is that first we decided that after the World War II there was a welfare state. The concept of welfare state has to be implemented. When the welfare state came into existence, the governments believed that it is their responsibility to provide certain welfare mechanisms, certain welfare provisions for the people, which is very beautiful and required of the time. But as the time goes by, each and every census, each and every committee report that comes and says tribals are still backward than the non-tribal communities. Then where are we lacking? Why wouldn't we? And even we have prime ministers acknowledging that every 1 rupee they spend, only 10 paisa will go and reach the people. So this has also again percolated with the market capitalism coming into the picture. They also started pushing them to a decentralized governance formation. That is the reason we have 73rd, 74th Amendment Act, which allows the Gram Panchayat elections and all of that coming into the picture. Governments across the world also started to realize that not unless we involve people in the day-to-day operation of governance and all of that, we wouldn't potentially have a development that we aim to do. And many states have been like encouraging self-help groups, microorganisms, financing banks and all of that into picture. But there are many studies that also prove that the self-help groups that are initiated by the government in India have been also continuously taking shapes. First, they started as a social empowerment schemes, then they turned into economic empowerment schemes, and there were a lot of failures that we also see within the how self-help groups have been functioning in the day-to-day level in the Indian society. But my understanding is, if this particular group organizations, group formations that comes from the people based on the need of them, this would potentially have a greater impact, and it would be our responsibility as either academics or even as a part of bureaucracy to identify these group formations, not to come up with a broader one-size-fits-for-all solution, rather than catering to a decentralized level and encouraging them would be a wonderful way to again have the self-reliance about the indigenous communities and Janjatis that are present in India and all over the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sipoi Sabeshu. Now it is time to lunch break. After lunch, we will be here to witness the another 2 lecture. So please go to the dining hall to take a break.